I went like basically my whole 30s without working. I was trading a little bit here and there. And to take off your 30s where everybody's like, yeah, are you out of your mind? My dad, when I told him we were going to go sail around the world, like he looked at me and he was like, don't you like your job?
Are you ready? All right. Hi there. Welcome to the Remote Work and Travel Show. I am your host, Nora Dunn, aka the Professional Hobo. And in this series, I speak with ordinary people who have extraordinary travel lifestyles and remote careers to get the real dirt on what it's like to travel long term while working abroad. Now, there's not a lot of people who have been at this longer than I have. My guest today is one of them. He is Patrick Schulte. Patrick Schulte was a commodities trader in Chicago before veering off the American dream. He and his wife were in their 20s and financially successful, but they didn't feel like they really had done anything. In search of adventure, they left work, sold everything they owned, bought a boat, and set sail. While this was supposed to be a temporary adventure, by the time they were halfway around the world, they had decided that they were never returning to normal life. They sailed around the world for 4 years. They raced a 65 Porsche across America. They lived in a 58 VW bus for 2 years, traveling from Alaska to Argentina and then eventually over to Europe. Then they bought another boat and they had children in Mexico. They traveled across the US and Mexico in a vintage motorhome. And now, for the last 5 years, they've been cruising the islands of the Caribbean. 20 years later, Pat has never looked back. Throughout his 30s, he traded stocks online for himself in order to finance their travels. He's blogged about it and all of his travels at bumfuzzle.com. And he wrote a book called Live on the Margin about trading and the traveling life. Eventually, he created Wanderer Financial, where he has mentored hundreds of others who are inspired by this lifestyle, and he teaches them how to trade and grow their portfolios so they too can live a life of freedom. Pat, welcome to the show. It's so great to meet you.
Hi, Nora. It's great to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, well, a great pleasure. And of course, where have we caught you at the moment?
Right now, I'm in Arizona. We're traveling around by motorhome and visiting family. And then in a couple of weeks, we'll head back to our boat, which is in Aruba. And so we're just kind of moving all over the place right now.
Well, you've definitely done a lot of long-term overland travel on boats, motorhomes, Porsches, RVs, and everything in between. And I definitely want to dig into all of that. But where I'd really like to start is this turning point. You took off on this temporary, limited time backpacking adventure, and something happened, and you decided you were never going back. What happened?
Yeah. So when we were in our 20s, we were living in Chicago and doing the work thing. And then we just decided, we need to do something big, we need to have an adventure. And so we decided to do it. And we somehow fell on, we're going to sail around the world. And so we bought a boat and we took off. And the plan from the get go was, go have this crazy adventure, but then we'll just come right back and we'll just pick up where we left off. But I'd say about 2 years in, we were in Italy at the time and traveling around inland a bit and just going to all the different cities in Italy. And we just thought, this is it, man. We are never going back to normal life. Like, we need to find a way to just do this, to see the whole world. There's so much. And so that's what we've done. We just kept going.
And so then obviously when you made that decision that we need to find a way to keep doing this forever, was that when you got into online trading?
It was. I was always a trader. That's what I did in Chicago. That's how I made a living there. And then kind of during that time, and right about the same time, the way that I had traded, which was open outcry, like standing in the pits of Chicago, yelling and screaming all day, that kind of went away. Like, electronic trading took over. This was 2005. And yeah, that kind of trading went away. So all went online, and I just sort of made the transition and began, trading on my own, online, that way. And yeah, just that went pretty well. The transition went okay. It didn't work out for a lot of guys who were just used to that, that face to face, got to be there. And I guess because we were off doing amazing things, it was a bit different. It wasn't, I'm just going to sit down in this room in my house and plug away at a computer all day. So yeah, it's worked out good.
Well, and that begs a question I was going to say for later, but this is the perfect time to ask it. And that is there's a lot of people who are day traders who are really tied to the computers and the markets, or they're tied to their computers when certain markets are open. From open to close, there's a lot of active trading that happens, and that I don't feel is necessarily very complementary to the full-time travel lifestyle, especially if you're doing things like sailing the Caribbean, where you might actually go for days without a good connection. So how do you, and have you had to tweak how you trade in order to accommodate the travel lifestyle?
Yeah, it's changed a little bit over time, but for the most part, yeah, we're not. I'm not a day trader. I'm not just like getting in and out for pennies. I'm trading longer term swing trading. Most trades are at least a couple weeks. Sometimes a little longer. I do have when I am kind of in one spot and am going to be plugged into to internet and be there for a while. I do have different trading strategies that I employ for periods like that. So I do have some more active trading for when there's times like that. And then when I'm going to be away or I'm off doing other things and I know that I'm not going to be, glued to a screen, then I switch it up.
Is this the sort of stuff that you teach on Wanderer Financial?
It is exactly. Yeah, we're trying to make it as accessible as we can, and really try to teach people that some different methods of trading and investing. And a lot of people, they come to me with zero experience, other than maybe contributing to a 401k. So this just kind of gives them a much broader understanding of how the markets work and different ways of trading and earning a living that way.
And to what extent are the products and services that you offer on Wanderer Financial US centric versus being accessible to an international audience?
Yeah, we do have people from all over the world. Canada and America are two main markets for us, and that's because we do trade just U.S. stocks. But we do have we've got subscribers all over Europe. We've got Japan, we've got Australia, and for them, it's usually just a matter of some paperwork, kind of using a different kind of broker that allows them to trade U.S. stocks versus just their own home countries. It's all accessible, and we're usually able to walk people through that. So, yeah, we've got a nice mix. Every morning we check in our base camp group. If people want to, they can join us for the daily chat in our base camp group, and it's a neat group. We have people coming from all over the place, and every day, people posting their pictures from where their trading desk is for the day, and it's neat.
And do you have an idea of what percentage of the people who are part of your club, your tribe, are full-time travelers?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know what the exact number would be, but yeah, we have people checking in from their boats. In the Caribbean, we've got somebody cruising down the Central American coast right now. We've got Europe. We've got just people all over, and those are just the boats. The people that are sailing, and we've definitely got a lot of van travelers, a lot of people like that as well that are just scattered about. I'd say in the neighborhood of 10% are probably like pretty actively traveling, and the rest are very much, glued into that lifestyle and want to get there, and at least are there partially. They've definitely got that bug in them. They want to travel, they want to do it, and they do, just not full time yet.
Well, and certainly I would imagine it would take some time to learn the skills necessary to be able to generate enough income to be able to live on it as a lifestyle. I'm sure that it's different for everybody, but do you have any advice and expectations that you might want to give someone who's looking at getting into trading as a way of funding their travels?
Yeah, well, that is kind of the hard part. I mean, it is the stock market. There is always risk, and there's no guarantees, right? Stock markets go up, they go down. We just basically, what we really focus on is managing risk. When the market's tumbling, we manage to get away and get out and not get hurt, and then be there for when it returns. So that's basically just about managing risk. But yeah, people need to have fallback too. We can't say like, hey, you're going to earn this much each month. Like that's just not something you can do. So we manage expectations that way, and we just try to teach people as much as we can.
I would imagine there's a lot of people, there's all this momentum behind the FIRE movement. I would imagine that this is also something that you are able to cater to pretty effectively.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, I mean, we're really all about financial independence. I mean, that's what we're out here for and trying to achieve, for everybody. So, I mean, my whole life kind of revolves around that. It's just become like I'm trying to be financially independent. That's all I've ever done, for 20 plus years now, just traveling and working at just being my own boss and being out there and doing my own thing and doing it from wherever I feel like doing it at the time. And I really, love, I love it when we have the success stories and people are getting out there, and I love just, helping people achieve that.
Now, Wanderer Financial was not your first online venture. So when you started traveling as full-time as a lifestyle, I know you were doing the online trading, but then you also had your travel blog, Bumfuzzle. Now, I'm curious, and I think that was also the name of your boat at the time,
Yes.
or your current boat, which is a great name, by the way.
Thank
But
you.
I'm curious if that was ever a business or if you ever thought it might be a business, because I was on your website and it didn't look like you're monetizing it in any way. But so what has Bumfuzzle been to you?
Yeah, so Bumfuzzle interesting in that way is that we never did monetize it. It was we were kind of the early days of blogs. Started it right when we started off traveling in 2003, and it was just like truly was just a way to kind of keep in touch with family, show them what we were up to as we were halfway around the world. And yeah, I mean, over time, people just found us, and followed us. And I think, I think, anyways, my honesty and straightforwardness with regards to my travels and my life and our expenses and everything just kind of made people, trust me, and they knew I was a straight shooter and this is what I was doing. So, um, yeah, so I guess I never monetized Bumfuzzle, but in a way I did, because then when I did start Wander Financial, the vast majority of our subscribers would come directly from having followed us at Bumfuzzle, and it kind of just happened organically. But we're not out trying to we're not out just randomly shooting across Google and Facebook ads trying to like hit random strangers. It's very much a community that, very, very like-minded people that were following Bumfuzzle for a reason, because they enjoyed the travel lifestyle and that sort of thing. And so then they found us at Wander as well. So it's a good group, really good group.
I agree wholeheartedly that there is, it's harder to do now, but I think for anyone like yourself and myself who started travel blogging, in the, I call it the pioneer days, right? So before travel blogging was a thing, right? For
Yeah.
us, we started it for the sheer love of travel, for the sheer love of chronicling our travels, and really just as a way for our family and friends to stay in touch with us. I think that that's back, anyone who started a travel blog before 2010 did not do it with the idea of doing a business with it. And because of that, we built a huge community. I mean, that was the time when people would actually specifically follow travel bloggers for their voice and their observations. These days, with a travel blog opening up every 38 seconds, it's a little more difficult to build that community. So definitely for you to have parlayed that community over to Wanderer Financial was really brilliant. But I'm curious because certainly in my experience, balancing travel blogging with traveling is not always an easy thing, even if you're not trying to make money as a travel blogger. I actually wrote an article about, I don't know how many reasons not to start a travel blog. And a lot of that was because you're spending all this time, in front of your computer, writing the article, processing the photos, uploading the thing. I mean, it is a lot of time, even if it's just the sheer act of writing and posting.
Yeah.
But then by the same token, when I have written about experiences, if I have an experience with an observational eye, which is often what I do as a writer, it adds a different element to my actual travel experience. It allows me to appreciate it not only while being in it, but then also to take a step outside of myself and to understand the bigger picture of what I'm doing or experiencing. But that's me. I'm curious for you whether Bumfuzzle added or detracted from your travel experiences.
Oh man, it's really added to it for us. For me, it was. I understand what you're saying about the time thing, and I often when people say, "Man, you've managed to like keep blogging all these years?" Like so many blogs, just people just disappear one day. One day they've just stopped and they're gone, and we just kept at it. And for me, it really comes down to like the fact that we're always traveling. We've always been on boats and motorhomes. We haven't had TV this entire time. And like, what do most people do in the evenings? They watch TV, right? Like,
Yep,
so
for a few
for me,
hours.
yeah. So for me, I just replaced that time with, going through my photos, writing up a story and keeping track of it. And now, like, I'm so grateful that that's how I chose to spend my time. I mean, not only for my business now, that worked out as well, but also just because now I've got kids. We're always able to look back. We're constantly looking back and remembering stories, and then going, oh, let's look at that. And it's so easy. It's at our fingertips. Boom. We just bring up that page. Oh, well, I remember when we were here and we did this, and when was that? So it's an amazing diary for us, and now I just can't even imagine not having it or continuing it.
And you've had it for so many years now. I don't know if you've experienced this, but I'll often look back on older articles that I've written, and sometimes I don't even recognize my writing. Like, because my style will have changed dramatically, and it often reflects who I'm reading at the time too. So like, I'll have this totally like abstract approach to this article or this experience, and I'll be like, "Why? How did I even come to think of writing like that?" So
Right. Yeah, I can see that. Like, I don't know. I tend not to read it quite as much as I do, just like looking through the pictures, and I will get sucked in and just like start reading old blog posts. But yeah, I can definitely see. I mean, I started out when I was 28, 29, and I'm 48 now. So I mean, you know, life goes through these big changes during that time, and I can definitely see changes in myself, my writing, my way of thinking. Yeah, so it's kind of neat that way too.
20 years on the road, that's a
Yeah.
lot of time. Has your view of the world, or has your style of travel beyond the vehicle that you're on or in changed over the years? And if so, how?
I don't know that it's changed so much. I mean, I think in the beginning, maybe we're more about just like, wow, we're just the experience of being in a place, as opposed to kind of delving into it a little deeper and kind of really getting to know places. So I guess we do a little bit more of that now, I would say. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, it's just about seeing. I don't know. It's hard to say, but I mean, to seeing all these different people around the world and what they're striving for day to day and how they're going about their lives, and seeing what makes them happy, and then kind of thinking about how can I, you know, get some of that. Like, I want to have that same happiness. I want to see that, joy from my family versus the possessions that I'm buying, or just you see a lot more of that, I think, the more you travel as opposed to just kind of staying home.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I find generally, I mean, you touched upon the consumerism. Absolutely. When everything that you own fits into a bag, you, consumerism is no longer a thing. You just can't, there's nothing for you to buy. Or if you buy something, it has to replace something that's already in there. But then also really the widening of perspective, the understanding that there is, what makes people happy? How do they live their lives? And understanding that there is no one way to do something or think about something or achieve it. There are as many different ways to do, achieve, be, or have things as there are people coming up with the ideas to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And culturally, it also really, the culture will often very much affect how people live and work and try. I mean, it stands to reason, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've got two kids, they're 10 and 12, and I just love seeing the world through their eyes now. And they've always been travelers. They were born in Mexico. They've spent some time in the States, but it's usually just kind of visiting family for a couple months here or there. And we did do some motorhome travel as well across the States. But they've seen just so many different kinds of people, so many different lifestyles. They're so much more worldly than I was. Like, I mean, their view of the world is so vastly different than what mine was, even in my 20s. And so it's pretty neat to see that as well. So that's really another thing that's kind of kept us just really going and really driven all these years, since we've had kids. It's just there's so many things we want to show them, and things that we've done, we want to see them again, but we want to see them with them through their eyes, and it's a lot of fun.
I'm curious why you decided to have your children in Mexico.
Yeah, well, that was actually a purely financial decision. By that time, we had been traveling. We'd sailed around the world and we'd driven around most of it. So it was probably like 6, 7 years of travel by that point. We'd never had insurance. We're Americans, and here we are. We're stuck not having insurance. We can't get health coverage. We can't do anything in the States. Like every time I come here, I like get nervous, like, oh God, don't break an arm, like, oh geez, it's gonna cost us a fortune if you do. Yeah, so we came back from Europe. We flew to my wife's family in Minnesota. There we were storing our one big possession. It's a '65 Porsche, and it's actually the car that I came home from the hospital in 1974. So it's a family heirloom. But
Wow.
we literally just jumped in it. My wife was 7 months pregnant, and we just like had a road trip. Let's head down to Mexico. And we didn't even know where we were going. We were just like, oh, we'll just go to Mexico. And they have babies. You know, they're like, we're families like looking at us like we're mad, and you're like, well, no, they all have babies. They get along just fine. So, you know, we got to Puerto Vallarta, and we were like, oh, this is a nice place. I bet you they have a good hospital. Let's go check it out. And within like a day or two, we found a nice doctor, found a nice hospital, and it was a financial decision. At the end of the day, it cost $3,000 to have a baby down there, and it cost us probably 15 or 20 up here in the States. So
Wow, that's a practical decision.
yeah, and now my kids have dual citizenship as well, so it's just kind of a win-win.
There you go. I was wondering if that was going to be an instrumental part for them as well to be able to have that.
Yeah,
So if they're born in Mexico, you immediately get citizenship. Is that right?
yeah, yeah. They walk around with their two passports.
Well, lucky them.
Yeah, I agree.
How has it been? I mean, obviously, the experience of experiencing or re-experiencing a travel destination through the eyes of your kids, I can imagine is incredibly rewarding. I would imagine there's also a lot more to raising kids on the road, not the least of which would be homeschooling and other things. How has that experience been for you and for the kids?
Yeah, I mean, people are always. I remember before we had kids, and people were like, "Oh, well, this will all come to an end when you have kids." Like we heard that so many times, and yet, we just kept on going, and we never really changed our life. That was the thing. Like my wife and I, we knew this was a good life. It was a good lifestyle, and so we really didn't change anything. Like our kids are very minimalist. They know like you can only have so much stuff. And when we decide as a family we're going to go do something else, move to off of the boat and to a motorhome, or from a motorhome to a boat, like we just pack up our couple of bags and off we go. So that they've got that instilled in them, which I think is great. I think that'll really bleed over well to being an adult and making smart decisions. Overall, like just the travel of it is so much fun. And, there is it isn't, I don't know, it's really not that much more work. I mean, at the end of the day, like we still had to go grocery shopping, like we're just buying a little bit more food. It's like, it's not that much more to it. There is schooling, I agree, but, we are very much of the unschooling mentality where, we kind of wait for our kids to show interest in something, and then we really work at that, as opposed to like, okay, let's sit down and you're going to learn about American history today. So it's very different in that respect. And so far, I think it's turned out pretty well. My daughter was kind of a slow reader. It took, she would have been behind technically in school, as far as when she learned to read. But now she's just voracious. At 12, she reads a book a day. I mean, we can't keep
Wow.
up. I mean, it's just crazy. You can't keep up with her. So I think that sort of thing makes me feel like we've done it right. Like when somebody learns what they want to learn and when they want to learn it, then it's something exciting and fun versus like, something that they've learned to hate because it was shoved down their throat. So I don't know. That's kind of our take on schooling. But again, we always try to remind ourselves, you'll never know until your kids are 20 or 30. You don't know if you've succeeded or not. So
Well, and even then, right? I mean, we're always learning. It's always a
right.
process.
Yeah, we're still early in the game.
Well, and that is exactly, you're still early in the game. From what I have understood in speaking to other parents, the adolescence, the teen years can be a bit of a change maker in terms of lifestyle, because sometimes they crave a little more, shall I say, stability, but really in the form, I think it's more about socialization and having a stable group of friends that they can deepen their relationships with. Is that something that you've thought about, anticipated? If you thought about how you might deal with that, if and when that comes?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we talk about it quite often. I mean, there is there is that constant. Are they getting um, enough of that socialization? Are they getting enough of other kids? Because we do spend a lot of time just the four of us. We're on the middle of nowhere or on a boat or just in a new place, and they haven't met anybody yet. So that does happen. We're very fortunate in that our kids are 20 months apart, and they've always just only had each other. So it's just like they are just best friends. They're always together, always playing together, never fighting. I mean, it's kind of doesn't seem real sometimes, but and then they do have their online friends they're able to communicate with, and they do keep in touch with people that they've met around the world, and so that's neat too. So I don't know. I mean, it's a different world right now. I mean, it's things have changed. Even I try to remind myself, like, okay, I grew up in the suburbs and I had this group of friends, and that was it. Like you had your core group that you lived because you lived right next to them. And nowadays, I don't know if that's always the same situation. Like,
Mm.
uh, well, I don't want to get too philosophical about it, but it's like you hear about it, like people don't even know their neighbors anymore. So you could live in a place, but you might still not even have those tight friendship and connections. So I don't know. It's kind of one of those things you have to go out and search for those and actually make them happen. No matter what. So whether you're living in a house or whether you're on a boat or whatever. So I don't know.
You know what? That's a really good observation. It hadn't occurred to me that this is to the extent to which technology really as a mainstay, and how that has changed how we communicate and how that changes the new generations who are growing up.
Yeah.
Because you're absolutely right. I mean, I've watched teenagers who are, all together in the same group, and they still are doing nothing but communicating online. So, what's the difference if your kids' friends are on the other side of the world, right? If that's how they're going to communicate, then they can do it anyway. So, it's
Exactly.
certainly broadened our horizons.
Yeah, you see that group of 10 of them and they're all staring at their phones. And you're like, you guys talk to
Right?
each other.
Telling exactly. They're just telling 1,500 of their closest friends what a great time they're having, not actually talking to anybody. All right. I want to swing back around to Wanderer Financial because, of course, you spent all these years trading online. That has sustained you for the sheer joy of chronicling your journeys. You had Bumfuzzle. What inspired you to start Wanderer Financial?
Obviously we got the question all the time. People would email us like, how do you do it? Because I didn't really talk about it back then. I mean, you know, it was just something that happened in the background. Like money just appears and you go about your travels. And it wasn't something that interested me in sharing too much. But then kind of over time, I just got the question over and over and over again. And people began to pick up tidbits, here and there. I might mention something on the blog or whatever. And so they knew I was trading. They knew that's what I did. And, so eventually I just decided, me and my friend Nick O'Kelly, together we talked about it, and we're like, man, we get that question all the time. So let's write a book about it. So we did that. We wrote Live on the Margin, and we talked very much about the lifestyle and about downsizing and making simpler life. And then we also talked about the trading part of it, and worked all that in. But of course, and that was great and people loved it. But then the questions just like multiplied. Then like then people had more questions and they wanted more answers. Yeah. So then eventually I thought, well, I could teach a few people, how I trade. And so I started what actually at the time was called O Mentoring. And I started out with just, I offered it up for a few people and they just kept coming. And yeah, and so it just kind of blossomed over, a couple of years later, we changed it to Wander Financial and I took on a partner. And yeah, it's just kept growing and growing. And now it's just this like whole community, and it's really, really pretty neat. So it's
Is
been
that the
fun.
mainstay of your income now?
Yeah, I mean, between that and trading, I do, very well now. So now, yeah, I've actually have a steady income, and then yeah, which is kind of nice. You have something that is there and will pay the bill each month. But trading, you can go through these periods, 2, 3, 4 months where you're not really making any money, and then all of a sudden, boom, you hit it all at once. So it kind of smooths the flow, I guess, a little bit. I went like basically my whole 30s without working. I mean, I was trading a little bit here and there. But yeah, I mean, to take off your 30s where everybody's like, yeah, are you out of your mind? I mean, my dad, I remember when I was leaving, when I told him we were going to go sail around the world, like he looked at me and he was like, don't you like your job? Like, what are you doing? Like, he knew I was doing well. He knew life was good. So he couldn't fathom it, like, no, you work and you work and you work. And then when you get to be my age, then you can do that stuff. But I just didn't see it that way. So yeah, we took out our 30s and just had a blast and raised our kids. And my goal when we had kids then was to raise them until they were 5, like at least get through those first 5 years, just full time, just being there like constantly, before actually working again. And like, I mean, my work, literally they're sitting next to me most of the time, we're on a small boat, there's only so many places for me to go and work. So we're just sitting at the kitchen table. I'm working, they're doing their thing. And yeah, so it's all worked out great. But
And it is a lot of balls to keep in the air, though. A lot of separate balls to keep in the air, right? Bumfuzzle is fun, but it's work in that it's time. It requires time. Wanderer Financial is an entire online business unto itself, which which has many different, you've got the online course and the community component and all the other things, which I know you have a partner, so you have some help in running that. And you have the online trading. Is there, what are the challenges or what advice do you have for someone balancing that kind of workload? Oh yeah. And by the way, raising kids and homeschooling and all that.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like some days you feel like overwhelmed, like, wow, I took on way more than I probably should have, but then at the same time, again, it always goes back to like, that are people like that are living in the suburbs, in commuting to work every day. Like, are they feeling less stressful or anything? Like, they're not any less. They would say the same thing. Like, I don't have time. This is just crazy. My life is nuts. But at the same time, like, I get to go and jump off the back of the boat, in the middle of the afternoon, and I don't have to drive a car through traffic. And like, I look out my window and it's just, ocean, and it's great. So I don't know. I mean, it is work, and it is that, but at the same time, like, I get to meet cool people. I get to hang out with them each day online, and I get to have like this amazing life that I've chosen. That it's really what I want to be doing. So it's a good balance.
Well, if ever there was somewhere to wrap this up, I think that's it, because I'm very inspired by that. Pat, where can people find you and connect with you? And do you have any final words for us today?
Yeah, well, people can join me at Bumfuzzle anytime. That's Bumfuzzle, and that was the name of our first boat. We named it Bumfuzzle, and it's just stuck ever since. It's been the name of all our boats. But it is kind of funny because you go to places like Australia, and they're like, Bumfuzzle, like,
That sounds dirty.
that sounds terrible. And then other places where they do know the meaning, and then other people that don't, and it does mean bewildered or confused, which is what we felt at the time when we first took off. So but yeah, so they can follow my travels there, or they can, if they're interested in learning more about Wanderer Financial, they can check us out right there, wandererfinancial.com. So thanks for having me, and it was really great. I love just talking about the lifestyle. I love encouraging others to do it. I like to be a mentor to people, and it just makes me feel good, like when other people achieve their dreams and their goals. So it's very good. Very, very nice. Thank you.
Cool. Well, we will include all of those links and more in the show notes or description. So everybody head down there to find those ways to connect with Pat. While you're down there, do click on the link for your free checklist of 10 things to do before you travel long term. These are things that both Pat and I have learned about the hard way, so you don't have to. So cover all your bases with that checklist. You will not regret it. Pat, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was great.
I'm Nora Dunn. I'm otherwise known as the Professional Hobo, and I will catch you next time.